You're listening to All Country News.
First things first, you're from Georgia. What are your thoughts on the football season this year? Over-unders, how many games we're going to win? What do you think?
Yeah. Okay, so I moved here from Athens, Georgia. So I'm a diehard dog. Honored to be a part of, like, I was in town when we won the first Natty, and then here when we won the second. But it's been incredible for, like, the drought that we had as fans from the 80s to now is it feels good to celebrate. But I think this year, the biggest test is going to be, I think we're playing Texas this year, at Texas. And that's going to be a big one. I think if we can clear that one, I'm not terribly worried about Texas or after Texas. I think Bama without Saban, I don't know. I'm not as scared of them as I was. And then there's one more. I think we play Clemson this year, and that one should be fun. So I can't wait. I'd like to think we'd go like we did last year, go undefeated into the SEC championship and see what happens. But it's college football. You never know.
I love it. So have you joined the Music City, Georgia Mafia or whatever y'all call yourselves? I know it's led by like Ray Fulcher and Travis Denning. Have you joined that?
I'm on the outside of that, but I would love to join at some point. I feel like it'd be a nice way to kind of connect back to Georgia, because the first time I think it was the Georgia Tennessee week last year, I went to Publix, and I was shocked at the fact that, I'm not in Athens anymore. I was wearing a Georgia shirt, getting nasty looks. Everybody's got, Tennessee orange on. So yeah, it would be nice to have a group like that to kind of be like, okay, I'm not the odd man out in my state at this point.
We'll have to add you to like the Facebook group or whatever. Yeah, but I know just talking with the two of them, there is a large group. So we'll have to get you in on that.
I'd love to. Yeah, please do. Please do.
So want to kind of throw it back to your upbringing a little bit. It's so funny. I was just having a conversation with my dad the other day, and he's like, I don't even remember how you got into country music, because I grew up on a healthy dose of like, the Allman Brothers and Prince and the Rolling Stones. And so for me, my Papa Max handed me a Toby Keith CD when I was little and was like, here you go. So for you, like, what was that first country song that really got you excited?
Oh man, that's a great question. I'd probably have to say "Gentle on My Mind" by Glenn Campbell. I think that was the first song we used to watch. Hee Haw. I never told him. Well, I mean, it was way before my time, but my parents and grandparents loved that show. And I remember one night Glenn came on and did that song live, and we always used to watch it, and I was like blown away by the song. So that's my earliest memory of like one standing out to me. But my grandparents, my Nana had a little radio in her kitchen, like a little portable one. And so when she was cooking, she would always have it on. And so my earliest, exposure to country music was literally from probably one all the way up until, I moved out of the town, to everything from, I love Patsy Cline. She's up there for me, to newer stuff that's out now, and getting to be a part of both and being like, I get to, write these songs now that I grew up listening to, I think is a really special thing. But yeah, Glenn Campbell probably up there for me.
I love that. I don't think I've ever gotten that answer. I'm like kind of obsessed with this answer. So
yeah.
Like wherever you keep your like ideas for songs, put down Glenn Campbell, and then next to it with an asterisk, remind to credit me when you
you will get a you'll get a
But when did that songwriting start? It sounds like your Nana and your whole family kind of really fostered this love of music. But when did you kind of decide, oh, like I actually kind of like really, really like this, and started to kind of put pen to paper?
Yeah, I was telling somebody earlier, I took guitar lessons for about 4 years, and I started to notice that every time I'd have to learn someone else's song, I hated it. Like I couldn't stand it. Like I didn't want to learn covers. I would much rather take the chords I knew and start making something different. And so that was probably 12 or 13 was when I started to like realize that was a thing where, some people like to learn a cover of Smoke on My Jacket, or that's my song. That's embarrassing. Smoke on the
Smoke on the
Water.
water.
Yeah. I was more like, I don't really want to learn that. I'd rather try to make something. And so 13 on was when I started realizing I like to make things. And then lyrically, songwriting wise, 14 or 15 was when I started to try it. I had GarageBand on my computer, and I would use my like earpod mic to record everything. And so I would make songs in my bedroom, and it just grew from there.
Would you still release the first song you wrote, or is that gonna stay?
Absolutely not.
vault?
No, no, that will be in the vault until the day I die. Yeah, it's
Oh
not
my
good.
gosh. Wouldn't that be funny though? I know. I've always wondered. I'm like, some of these, I mean, country music legends, speaking of like a Toby Keith or, even like I'd be interested to know like the first song like Hardy wrote, like was it an
Mhm.
absolute like just horrible, horrible thing? And like, could we like get a bunch of these country music stars to release their first song on some kind of like, now that's what I call a bad song or something like that?
Yeah. Oh, hey, you make a compilation. I'd be on it. Yeah, I'd probably be at the bottom of that list for sure.
I love it. But I think one of my favorite things about you is your songwriting. The cadence of how you write to me is really familiar, but seems very new at the same time. And I'm wanting to know if that's what kind of country is. You have it
Mm,
proudly displayed on your Instagram. So that means it must be important to you. So what is kind of country, and how does that kind of relate to the artistry or the artist you want to be?
yeah, I kind of country to me is this idea. I grew up in South Georgia. I love everything about what that entails. Like, I'm I'm country till the day I die. But I grew up on so many different influences and so many sounds that weren't traditional country. To do both, I feel like is a way for me to offer something new to country, where you're not having to convince yourself, well, I have to listen to this song because it's country, or I have to listen to this indie rock song because it's indie. It's more like, let's do both. So kind of country to me is sort of taking what I grew up on in both ways, the indie rock thing, and the traditional country thing, and mixing the two. And then the cadence of it comes from, I that's a huge compliment because I pride myself in trying to find new ways to phrase and say things rhythmically. And it's been fun to experiment with. And I feel like it's so much more interesting when you can get one that kind of, even the cadence of it grabs your ear.
Yeah, I love it. What do you feel like you struggle with the most when it comes to songwriting? I forget who I was talking to the other day, but they kind of mentioned it was like trying to find new ways to say the same thing.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
talked, oh, it was Drew Parker. I was talking to Drew about this, and he was like, that's my biggest struggle. Do you kind of fall into that same category? Or, what are some of your struggles kind of day in and day out, is being kind of the songwriter aspect of your career as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah. I think it's this idea that, like I'm writing 5 days a week in town. And so it's country music. It has to be accessible to people that listen to it. And so you can get tricked because on day 4, when you've written about the same thing 4 different times, you're like, man, I want to write about something weird. Or I want to write about something different. And, do it by all means. But this idea is that you have to find a way to say it where people that are listening relate to it. And they go, oh, I can see myself in that song. And so I think that the hardest part of country music is keeping it simple enough for people to put themselves in that song, but also keeping it fresh, because you have to do both really well to keep it engaging.
Yeah.
So I think the difficulty there is for sure finding new ideas or just barely different ways to say the same things, but then also getting personal and vulnerable in songs without making people feel uncomfortable. I think like balancing that vulnerability with accessibility, where it's like, oh, I think he's being honest in that song, but also I felt that way. I think all of those things are difficult, but when you can do them right, I mean, it's the best.
Yeah, it's definitely a balancing act. I say that like I write songs myself, which I don't, and don't ask me to, because I will be of no
You'll be
assistance.
a writer on that Glenn Campbell
Oh yeah,
idea.
the Glenn Campbell song. I'll have like maybe the bridge, which is what,
There
a
you
sentence.
go. Yeah.
But I want to talk to you about inspiration. I feel like inspiration really can come from everywhere, but how do you kind of protect and make sure that you always are kind of finding that inspiration, or having your your notes open when you're at Red Door and you hear someone say something. So how do you kind of protect that access to your, your inspo and make sure it's always available to you?
That's a great question. I mean, for me, I never get tired of listening to music. I mean, so much so that I'll get home from a write or maybe a double, and the first thing I want to do is turn on, the radio or my phone. I think the big thing for me though is different styles of music are hugely important. So I listen to country enough to keep myself in tune with what's being made. But most of the time I listen to anything but country. And I think the mix of that keeps it healthy and it keeps it fresh and it keeps me inspired. Because if you're in a bubble of genre, you can sort of become pretty bored, I think, with the repetition of it.
Mhm.
So that's anything from, like, I love Coltrane, I love jazz I love to cook. Uh, I love like Latin music is really amazing. And then, I've been on a Bad Bunny kick
Yep.
for like a month just because his phrasing and his cadence is so different than country. And so I think that's one of the ways I do it is try, if I'm gonna listen to music, to try and pull different influences and different styles of music. And then the ideas come from maybe living life while you're doing that. So, if you're talking, having a conversation, like you said, the Red Door thing, you sort of bank those conversations, but then maybe musically you're listening to something completely different every day and it's giving you different ideas on how to say something or how to structure a song or, all those different things.
No, I totally get that. I mean, I'll be at, at my gym in my small, training class, and they'll be like, Bobby, what new hot country song should we play? I'm like, can we not? Like, I
Yeah.
need, you need a healthy break. You have to
Yes.
have a healthy relationship with your, I guess, overlord, your country music
Yes.
overlord, I guess you want to
You do.
call it.
Yeah. You can't let yourself, I think you get stagnant when you're only in the bubble of country music.
Totally. I agree. But I want to talk about the EP. I'm obsessed with it. I'm sad it's only 6 songs, so I'm hoping that means we'll have a bigger project in the works, and I have a feeling that you probably wrote more than 6 songs or had to really chop it down, so kind of chat with me about why these 6 were kind of the perfect introduction. I know you've been breadcrumbing us along for a little bit, so ultimately, like, when it came down to it, why was it, these 6?
I think the like really logistic answer is the fact that 7 songs is an album on Spotify.
Really? I didn't realize that.
To make it an EP, you have to cut it to 6. So that's like the less interesting version of that. But I think we felt like these songs for where I'm at, introducing myself to the fans is a really vulnerable project. I think each song felt vulnerable to my story, and that's something that we really pride ourselves in. Like, I'm not going to write a song that I'm not in.
Yeah.
And I mean that by, like, my experiences and my stories sort of have to be in that, or I don't cut the song. And that's not to say that it's bad to cut a song, that maybe you're playing a character in, or it's not completely true to yourself. Nothing wrong with it. But for me personally, these songs felt like each one of them was a personal story, something I've gone through, something that I feel like people relate to because they've gone through it. And so we settled on these 6 for this period of time because we felt like as we introduce me to the fans, the more vulnerable we can be early, the better. And we felt like these collections were the most vulnerable songs we had.
No, I love it. So when it came to naming the EP, I feel like naming a project is like naming a baby. So Wannabe Cowboy, I think it's perfect because especially what you just said, you want to be as vulnerable and upfront from the beginning. This is who I am. I'm not trying to be, I don't know, George Strait, but George Strait has influenced me. So was that kind of the conversation you had with yourself and your team ultimately when you named the EP?
Yeah, I think it felt like a way to identify what I am. And honestly, it is the fact that I have all these tendencies in me to be a drifter and a rebel and cause, I can cause a problem. I can make a mess pretty easily in my personality. I think any creative would agree. Like, there's this weird duality to who we are. It's like we could be a really terrible person, or we could be a good person. And I think trying to find the mix of what a cowboy is, good and bad. Also, growing up in a neighborhood in South Georgia. Like I'm not a cowboy. I don't you know, I had a house and a, you know, a tire swing. I didn't have a pasture and a ranch. So it's like finding a way to communicate to people that all those characteristics of what people think when they think of cowboy is in me. But at the same time, I think there's some level of like honesty where like I'm not trying to be anything I'm not. I'm not trying to fake a persona for people. And so I felt like wannabe felt like a really good idea to communicate that. Like I'm me, I'm as real as it gets if I can be. And I'm not gonna put on a persona to market myself as something I'm not. So
No, I love that. But I think besides the songs, and I love the songs you chose, not that I know the ones that got cut, but these six I love. But for me, what stuck out the most was kind of this sonic story from song 1 to song 6. Was that purposeful when you kind of did that order? I feel like we're super high and then we're kind of low and then we're high again and then we end with this like pretty little bow. So were the sonics important to you, you know, when you put this together and especially that flow?
yeah, massively important. And I appreciate you knowing that because um to me, any collection of songs, if you're not going to do singles, any collection of songs needs to be a journey for the listener. I'm still a believer that I press play on a project and I listen all the way through. I try not to skip around. And so, yeah, the sonics of that, I think, is just taking people on a journey in those 6 songs of like taking them up, taking them down. I think that's important when you're trying to encourage people to listen to whole projects. You can't ask that of people and then create something that's not enjoyable all the way through. And so if you're going to ask people to listen to this EP, we felt like it was super important to make it a journey and not just a collection of 6 random songs that people just skip through, you know?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of musical whiplash. So
No.
this did not do this, but I want to talk to you about some exciting news. You're hitting the road with
Yeah.
Mr. Connor Smith. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, I don't get why these two people are going on tour together. This I get. And
Let's
this I'm
go.
excited about mainly because you're going to be at the Chicago stop, which means I get to come. So
Heck yeah.
super excited for this. So chat with me about being out on the road, what you're excited about, maybe what you're nervous about. Chat with me a little bit about joining Mr. Smith.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, like I'm so honored and stoked to do it. I think we said the same thing. My team and I were like, man, you couldn't have found a better fit for somebody to take you out on your first run. Such a good dude, great music, great team. Um, I'm incredibly excited because I've made my whole pitch as an artist has been my live show. I think when you see me live, if you're not a fan, you'll be a fan. More than anything else I do. My live show is my thing. It's what I enjoy most. And I'd say that over writing and recording music. I think playing shows is my favorite thing to do ever. And so I'm excited to get to try that, you know, on a tour style. And I think the bigger thing is connecting with people, seeing people face to face. I mean, that's the first time I'll be able to do that since putting this music out. And that's something that, like, if you just write and you just record and you're just on social media, there can be such a disconnect of seeing the people that listen to your music. And I think it's really cool. And I'm super excited to be out there and see people face to face that are listening to my music and connecting. And so hopefully we can use it as an opportunity to grow and play our hearts out, and can't wait to see you in Chicago. It's gonna be great.
My most important question is this full band?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. No, the only ones at the moment that aren't full band are the Canada run because I don't have money yet to not take a huge
All
a
your
huge
buddies don't have passports, so we're not
yeah,
taking.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, the US gigs, we made a whole commitment. We were like, we're gonna treat it. Connor's given us a full opening slot. And so we were like, we don't want to take that for granted. So it's full band. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm super excited. Bring your jacket in November in Chicago. This is not Athens, Georgia. You're gonna be
Yes.
cold.
Yes.
But just to wrap things up here, you know, you've already done so much this year. You've signed this killer pub deal. Your streaming numbers are awesome. You're making a name for yourself. You have an EP. You're going out on tour with Connor Smith. But if there selfishly, like if there had to be one or two more things you'd like to do this year, what would they be?
Man, that's a great question. I'm super grateful for what we have already on the road and what we're building. I think I'd like to play a few more shows. And we're in the works on that. I think that's a great thing to kind of solidify the end of the year with, is a few more shows as we continue to grow. And then merch. I know it's just like a small one, but we're working on that. That's something I want to get done this year. Give people a way to connect with that side of things. So that's probably the two. I'm like, more shows, making some hats and some shirts. I love trucker hats, so that's like our big thing, is making some trucker hats. So it's kind of small, but it's something I want to knock off the list.
I love it. I love it. I know I'm slowly but surely building my hat wall behind here. So I got a
Oh,
lot of
let's go. I love that.
that are gonna go up there. And I wish you had hats. I'm going to Austin for a bachelorette party in 2 weeks. We could have had a bunch of wannabe cowboy
Just
hats
all of them.
all over Lake Travis. It would have been just everywhere. So, but thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
We've really been enjoying your music. And when I saw that I forget, it's you and Connor, and who else is on that tour?
Jonathan Hutcherson.
Yes, John. When I
Also
saw that you were
incredible
coming
dude.
to the Chicago stop, I was like, ha.
Yeah,
It's
let's
like
go.
perfect timing. So, and
Yes.
you'll love that venue. I mean, that venue is the original Joe's is great, but Joe's live is like, I think a 3,000 cap. I mean, it's quite the room. So
I can't wait.
and
That's
barbecue's
great.
right next door. Like
Let's
it's
go.
it's
Let's
a
go.
place. It's a place. So thank
Love
you
it.
guys so much for taking the time. And we'll be including you in our roundup and everything next week. So, and got a full review and just super excited for you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the time.
Awesome. Thanks,
Appreciate it.
guys. We'll chat with you soon.
See ya.
Awesome. Bye-bye.
You're listening to